when you feel an urge to shift, when you feel this constant feeling to do something different, that is God pulling you in a direction in order to shift your life. So when God calls you to shift, don't fight it. There has been many seasons of my life where I felt this strong desire to let something go, a strong desire to do something differently than what I was doing currently at that time. I didn't understand what it was. It was just this burning feeling like what I was doing was something that was uncomfortable. It started to become very annoying. It was a feeling that would not let me go. It wouldn't leave me alone for anything. And I just remember questioning, why is this feeling around? Why do I keep having these thoughts to change this part of my life or do something differently than what I was doing already? But what I realized is, when God needs you to shift, He will often start with a conviction type of feeling, a emotion that you can't really describe. It's just an eerie type of expression inwardly where you know something is off, you know something is different, you know something doesn't necessarily feel right. And it's just this constant burning thought of doing something different. And so when I was experiencing this, I remember speaking to my significant other and I'm like, I keep having this thought to let this go. Like, this is a constant thought. It's a reminder. It's something that no matter what I do, I can't leave it alone. And for months, I pondered on the idea of what that feeling meant, right? As I continued to go, God was literally directing my steps. He was changing the course of my path before my eyes. And it started with just little incidents or little things that felt like they were insignificant, but ended up being such a huge thing later on. And when I look back at those situations, I can literally say God had been pulling my heart for months, almost a year actually, where I would have random signs, random ideas, random thoughts and dreams of this very thing that God wanted me to let go. And so when you feel a shift coming, when you feel that urge to let something go, don't fight it. Because the very things that I'm doing now in the ways that I'm doing it, I had signs years ago. I had signs months ago to change the very things that I changed not too long ago. And some of us are in seasons where God is requiring us to change to get to the next level. He's requiring us to change something to obtain what He wants to give us. But I feel like when we're in our own minds, we're in our own heads, and we think that we know everything, God can't really work with that. He can't really move in the way that He wants to move in your life because you feel like you have complete control over you. You feel like you know what's best for you when God is telling you through your feelings, through your dreams, these ideas, these situations, I'm shifting you in a direction you don't even know where I'm taking you, but trust me. And I think I doubted where I felt like God was taking me. I doubted the idea. I doubted the journey. I doubted the destination because I was like, I don't see how that really makes sense for my life. I hear what you're saying. I know you're saying, you should probably do this instead, but I don't really see how that makes sense for me. And I would just question it and kind of go back and forth in my mind. It was a mental battle I was having where I'm like, no, I'm good. Like, I'm not going to do that. Like, I'll do this, but I'm not going to do that. And I wish I would have listened because sometimes we think we know what's best for us. And I can laugh at the fact that God knows everything. So even though I was trying to be slick and take control of a situation that I had no idea of the outcome, God ultimately pushed me in the direction anyway. And sometimes we don't listen, and God will start out with like a little pull, and then it's a little nudge, then it's a little push, and then He just might shove you because you're not listening. And I felt like God literally shoved me in a direction because He had tried to pull at my heart for so long. He had tried to nudge me for so long, and I was not being receptive. I wasn't listening. But at the end of the day, most of the time, our biggest problem is the fact that we want to hold on to everything as tight as we possibly can. We want to hold on to things with such control because we're fearful of the outcome. We're afraid of letting something go and then taking a step being blind. We're afraid of going in situations that's unfamiliar to us because we're used to being so comfortable. And so if you're someone who is afraid to let something go, or if you're afraid to fight this, you're fighting this feeling because you're afraid, I want you to know that you don't have to be afraid. But God is going to require you to let this thing go so that he can position you, pivot you, and shift you into the direction he needs you to be in. You have to stop clinging to what's familiar. And I know that this can sound so easy, but now that I've gone through my twists and turns in life, and even recently, I was in a season where I was just kind of silent about my expectations for my life because I couldn't really see much of anything taking place the way that I wanted it to. And it was a hard situation for me to be in because I've seen the ups, I've seen the downs, but to be in a state of confusion and not really know where you're headed was a weird place for me. And I remember speaking to my fiance and he was like, don't ever let the enemy silence you, And so we talked about how I felt, and I got very, very clear on the very things I already knew, but the fact that I said it out loud just kind of solidified it for me. And so sometimes we just battle with ourselves in our mind. We sit there and we think about all of the outcomes, all of the things, and we allow our mind to tell us that there's no way out, that there's no escape, and that there's no hope for our situation. And because we feel like we can't see the road ahead, we would just rather stop in our tracks instead of taking a step forward. But I want to tell you, if you're someone who's battling with that yourself, the very thing that you need to do is the ideas that you have, act on them. The thoughts that you have to change something, to shift something, to do something a little bit different, try it and see how it works, because you sitting there doing nothing is not going to allow God to step in. God says faith without works is dead. So just because you're thinking, that's not works. That's not even having faith. And if anything, you have self-doubt and you're destroying the dreams and the visions that you have and goals that you have for yourself already before it even begins. And so what I want to tell you is, instead of sitting there and thinking about all of the ways that something can go wrong, if you have any small inkling of an idea to change something, to do something differently, do it and see what the reaction or the result is. And even when I spoke about how a few years ago I was having this desire to shift, if I would have done it just a little bit back then, if I would have just did what was uncomfortable back then, it wouldn't have took me as long as it took me now to do what I'm doing. And so if you can think about your life and your experiences, whether it's a relationship or a friendship or an opportunity to do something, maybe it's business related, whatever the case may be in your own personal life. If you feel like what you're doing is not necessarily the way that you want to be doing it, but you have this burning desire to do it a different way, to try something new, to implement something different, God may be calling you to shift. And sometimes you have to let go of something in order for God to give you so much more. Sometimes God is going to call you to shift, and you have to stop being so fearful of the outcome or the destination and allow God to work in your life. You have to know that obedience is going to give you blessings. Like, if disobedience can stop God from blessing you, then being obedient can allow God to bless you. So many times in my life, I sat there and I was disobedient because I would not act. I wouldn't move my feet. I would try to spend all day thinking about things, and I would just give up because I just got so confused and I was fed up. We think so much rather than taking a step forward. We never actually move our feet because we're so busy thinking ourselves to death. We just constantly battle in our minds, just trying to figure it out on our own, when God never said to figure it out on your own. God says to have faith and trust that he will guide your steps. So if I'm leaning on my own understanding, then I've already lost the battle before it's even started, because God told us to not lean on our own understanding, to trust in him and allow him to guide our steps. So I have to have faith. I have to trust that God's going to guide my steps. I have to trust that he's all knowing and he knows what he's doing in my life, even if I can't see that myself. And so if you're in a situation where you're fearful of the destination, you're fearful of the outcome, you're fearful of the direction in which you're headed, you have to take steps forward regardless of being fearful or not. and allow God to guide you, because he said he will never leave you in a place too long. He's not going to put you in a situation that you can't bear. Now, tests and obstacles and trials and things like that do come, but it also says that it helps us and build our character and strengthen us and build our endurance. Why? For the journey that we're meant to go on. So if we're being prepared for the journey, and I know that I'm victorious already, then all I have to do is trust God, and everything falls into place from there. And so when you move in faith, God is going to bless that, because you may not even know where you're going, but he knows the path, the direction, and everything that he has set out for you before you even go on the journey itself. Even when you don't have all the answers and when you don't know the destination, move in faith and trust that God is going to guide you every step of the way. He's guiding you through the silence. He's guiding you through him giving you the signs. He's guiding you through your feelings. He's guiding you already, and you already know this. So just trust the fact that he has your best interest at heart. So just remember, when God calls you to shift, when you feel that burning desire, trust God and allow him to guide your steps.